In this lecture, we're going to continue with more risk management assessment and strategies. The exam always assumes perfect world, meaning we have the buy-in from senior management for our risk management. They think what we do and the whole process is a great idea. It's something that the enterprise needs. But for us to go through this process, we need to clearly understand what are the acceptable risk levels. What kind of risk appetite does our organization have? And remember, that is set by senior management. If we are in an organization that has done this 50 times, then we most likely have the right processes in place. We have identified our assets. But if this is the first time, there's going to be a lot of legwork here. Because if we have not identified our assets, how are we going to protect them? So assuming this is the first time we do it, we're going to spend a ton of time identifying the assets. And here, it's important to understand an asset is both something tangible and something intangible. Intangible just means that you can physically touch it. It's our equipment, it's our facilities. It's all the physical things that we need to function as a business. The intangible ones are the ones we can't touch. That is the data on our systems, our trade secrets, our reputation. Everything, again, that we need to function as a business, but you cannot physically touch. Let's say we do risk analysis on a specific server. Then we need to figure out how much is that asset worth. The physical, tangible object, the server itself, how much did we pay for it? What is it going to cost us to get a new one? After we bought it, how much time and how much effort did it take to get it ready for production? How important is this server in our business? If the server got stolen, how much would it be worth to a competitor? How much have we spent maintaining and protecting the asset? And are we going to incur any financial losses if the server is no longer there? If, for instance, that server is our e-commerce web server and we now lose $100,000 a day because we can't do e-commerce, well then that is a loss. What if the server contains customer data? Is it protected well enough? If we lose it, will there be fines for losing that data? What is it going to do to our reputation? Now, if that server gets stolen and the encryption on the server is not strong enough, we lost a bunch of customer data, both transaction data and personal identifiable information. Let's say we get fined $100,000. For me and you, that's a lot of money. But if our company makes $100 million a year or is valued at $100 million, then maybe not so much. But maybe the loss of that server would cause a significant drop in stock prices, let's say 20%. If we're valued at $100 million and it drops 20%, well then our shareholders just lost $20 million. Or if we have $100 million in revenue every year and the breach is so bad that we lose 20% of our customers because they don't have confidence in us anymore. But again here, $20 million loss. And that really is why it's so critical we look at the whole picture. Sure, we can go out and buy a new server for $20,000. But I can't fix the stock prices or the lost revenue with $20,000 or $100,000 or $1 million. So the loss of an asset is not just the asset itself. It is both the intangibles and the tangibles. It's everything that makes up that asset. And in most places where I have worked, we have had an okay asset inventory. There was definitely stuff that was not on the list, but most of it was. At some point, I was the IT project manager, and we did a large data center move. And we kept finding servers in that data center where no one knew what they did. No one even knew who owned them, how they got there. They just magically appeared, and some of them were old, like really old. But some of them were also new. We spent an incredible amount of time tracking down what they did. Because this was at a hospital. You can't just unplug something and see what happens. What if this is something that keeps people alive? Now, there are a variety of reasons why this should never have happened. Obviously, you don't just plug servers in without updating the asset inventory. On top of that, you don't have open ports where you can just plug stuff in. And many of the servers that we found, it was just random analysts that had gone to some random conference, got sold a product that they didn't really need, and then either themselves or the vendor came out and installed it in the data center. They should not even have access. The only people that should be in the data center should be the data center or server team and not random analysts. So as you can hear, I feel a little bit sore about this. We did manage to track down every single owner for the systems and figure out what they did, but it did also give me multiple weeks with 80 plus hours of work time every week. Now, let's talk about risk assessment. At this point, we have a clear picture of all the assets that we have. We have identified our risks, and now we do our qualitative and quantitative risk analysis. We also do our risk register. And then we probably do some uncertainty analysis, because even with the quantitative risk analysis, the one where we put the numbers to the feelings, even here, it is really just our best guesses. We guess that if this happens, this is probably how bad it's going to be. And even if we're great at what we do, we don't have a magic crystal ball where we can see all the right numbers. But our hard work, our due diligence, and due care should give us a reasonable accurate picture of how bad the risks are, how much mitigation would cost, and what for this asset would be the best thing to do. After we have done all that, we hand it off to senior management. Now, what they do with that information is entirely up to them. They can choose to act on our recommendations, and they can choose not to. So really, for any risk to our enterprise, we can choose a different risk strategy. That could be risk mitigation. We reduce the risk. We put something in place that's going to minimize that risk to an acceptable level. And that really is key here. We keep doing that. We put in a mitigation that reduces the risk. If it is still too much, well then we add another mitigation until that risk is at an acceptable level. And of course here, everything we do is based on a cost-benefit analysis. Both because it makes sense, also this is something senior management can completely understand. It's numbers. If we put in this countermeasure and it's going to cost us $250,000 a year, but it's going to save us $1 million, well that's pretty simple math. So risk mitigation, risk reduction is some sort of countermeasure. And here I think it's also important to talk about risk appetite. How much risk are we okay with accepting? Again, how much risk is senior management okay with accepting? How either tolerant or adverse of risk are they? All completely based on who we are, what we do, what our vision is, what our mission is, and what in our organization is deemed reasonable. So if we have done the risk mitigation, whatever risk is left over is the residual risk. If that risk is still above our risk appetite, then we do the next mitigation. We could also choose to do risk transference or risk sharing. That is us transferring the risk to someone else. In most cases, this would be buying insurance. We give them a certain amount of money, and if something bad happens, they give us the money back plus whatever we need to fix the problem. But it could also be we do a project with someone else. We want to launch this new product. We know it comes with some inherent risk, and then if we're 50-50 partners with someone else, well then they have half the risk. Obviously, we also only have half the reward. Like I said, in most cases, risk transference is buying insurance. Then the next option we have is risk acceptance. We know the risk is there and we accept it. We don't do anything. We have done our due diligence. We have done our due care, but we know that that risk is going to cost us $250,000 a year, but the countermeasure we would need to mitigate the risk is going to cost us $1 million. Well, then we probably just live with the risk. It's going to be more expensive to do something about it, so we don't. We, of course, here again, monitor the risk, but choosing not to do something is okay if we have done our due care and our due diligence and it just doesn't make sense. Next up, we have risk avoidance. And here again, we do our due diligence, we do our due care, we have determined it's not financially viable to mitigate the risk, we can't transfer it, we can't accept it, well then, we stop doing whatever we're doing. Whatever's causing that risk, we remove it. If we determine that our employees using laptops cost us $2 million every year in losses from the lost laptops and the lost data, but we don't really need laptops, everybody is at their desks, well then we can just stop issuing laptops. In most companies, I know this may not work, but you get the idea, right? We stop whatever is causing the risk. And then finally, we have risk rejection, and that is never ever ever okay. That is us knowing the risk is there, but we just ignore it. Never okay. Because if you do, that is you not doing your due diligence, not doing your due care. You are now negligent and you are liable. Our risk responses should always be based on our analysis, our due diligence, our due care, and it should be one of the 4 categories: mitigate, transfer, accept, avoid. And with that, we are done with this lecture. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one.